Previously, after getting executed for false charges, Vikir regressed back to his childhood days in the Baskerville clan. This time determined to have revenge, he began working on increasing his power. He went through many obstacles on his road to obtain power. He also recovered the demonic sword, Beelzebub, which enabled him to obtain many unique skills. At the arena, Vikir finally showed his strength to the clan head, the person responsible for his execution. Vikir was called out to meet the clan head as the representative of the Morg clan. Adolf Morg had come to visit. Things got heated up while Adolf and Hugo were conversing about the superiority between magic and swordsmanship. During the debate, Adolf called his niece, Camus, to enter the room. Adolf told his niece to greet Hugo, but the girl called him a thief who stole their ruby mine. Adolf apologized for her behavior. Hugo also ignored her, saying she didn't know right or wrong as she was still a child. But Camus told Hugo to return the ruby mine he stole to provoke the clan head again. This caused Hugo to snap and yell back at Camus. Adolf tried to calm him down while Vikir suddenly entered the room, mocking the teaching system of the Morg clan. Camus left her uncle's side to mock Vikir back. Seeing the girl caused him to remember Camus from his previous life's memories as a genius magician. Vikir replied by saying that she was throwing a tantrum, which caused Camus to get even more angry. She started focusing ice magic on her hand and created an ice model of the two kingdoms. She then explained why the ruby mine should belong to the Morg clan instead of the Baskerville. Vikir casually replied that even though the Baskerville owned the ruby mine, they had no interest in it and only cared about the territory. This caused Camus to get more aggressive about proving her point. She extended her hand to the Baskerville territory, asking whose arm it was when it passed into Vikir's territory. Vikir grabbed her arm and said that it was his now. Camus blushed softly and got flustered at his response, asking why she was Vikir's now. Vikir suddenly pulled out a knife, saying that her arm was his now, with a scary look in his eyes. Camus got scared and screamed for help. Her uncle, Adolf, got angry and told Vikir to step away from Camus. Adolf asked for an explanation from the clan head, and Vikir then apologized and told them that the knife was fake and he was only joking. Camus, with teary eyes, told Vikir that she won't let him get away with that. The next day, the friendly competition between the two clans' young trainees began. This year, however, the attention was directed elsewhere. A spar between the two rising stars of the two clans, Camus and Vikir, was about to begin. Camus began the fight by doing a quadra-chanting. She fired the 4 spells at Vikir, but he easily dodged the spells with his quick footwork. Vikir rushed towards Camus as she put up a sand wall to block his way. Vikir easily broke the wall and rushed towards her. Camus got scared for a moment and closed her eyes. When she opened them, she saw Vikir holding his hand in front of her and suddenly flicked her forehead. Camus got angry, asking if Vikir was going easy on her. She raised 2 sand walls this time, but Vikir easily punched through them. Camus got caught off guard and got finger flicked on her forehead for a second time. She fell to the ground and got angry, then started firing spells at Vikir randomly. Vikir thought about whether he should kill her or not. While thinking of a plan to subdue her, Vikir saw the kids fighting behind them. Camus got furious due to not being able to hit Vikir and rushed toward him blindly. Vikir noticed one of the kids chanting a strong fire spell behind him and drew Camus towards them. As the fireball approached Vikir from behind, he advised Camus to prepare a protection spell. Adolf got concerned as the arena was covered by a huge explosion. The people from the Morg clan got worried about Camus's safety as the arena was covered in smoke. Camus managed to block the damage with protection magic, but the fire had burnt all of her clothes. She started crying between the smoke, thinking about the humiliation she would have to face if people saw her. Suddenly a jacket dropped on top of her. Camus looked up to see it was Vikir who gave her his jacket. Camus got flustered and wondered why Vikir helped her. The smoke clears up and as the people are relieved to see them safe. Later that day, Hugo was talking to Vikir about his duel against Camus. During this conversation, Hugo showed a bit of concern for Vikir. Seeing this surprised him and made Vikir recall his past life's memories of the cold, strict, and brutal Hugo. Hugo then talked about giving the ruby mine to the Morg clan so they could take care of the monsters. They were suddenly approached by Adolf and Camus for an important conversation. Adolf proposed to link the Morg and Baskerville through a betrothal. Adolf suggested that his niece, Camus, be married to the eldest son of Baskerville. Hugo replied by saying that his eldest son would be too old to be married to her. Camus then said that she would not marry anyone with a big age gap and looked at Vikir while blushing. Her uncle Adolf understood the situation. But he was reluctant to approve due to Vikir being a half-blood. Hugo got a bit irritated at this and asked what Vikir thought about that. Vikir replied by saying that he would marry her if he was ordered to. Adolf got offended by this. But after hearing about Vikir's skills, he decided to have a duel against him. Camus tried to stop her uncle, but he had already made up his mind. Even Hugo allowed him to fight Vikir. In the arena, Adolf decided to give Vikir a handicap. He created a jar full of water with only his magic and placed the jar on top of his head. Then he told Vikir that if he could spill even one drop, it would be his victory. Vikir charged towards Adolf to test the skills of a great magician while hiding his full power. Adolf immediately blocked Vikir's attack with a powerful shield and then retaliated with strong fire magic. Camus started yelling at her uncle for being unfair towards a kid. Hugo watched from the side and thought that he wouldn't have to interfere in their fight. Vikir continued to attack the shield made by Adolf. He kept accurately hitting the same spot over and over, and eventually created a crack in the shield. However, Vikir's sword wasn't able to handle the barrier and broke. Seeing Vikir's sword break, Adolf lowered his guard. He thought that Vikir wouldn't be able to fight anymore. But suddenly Adolf noticed the water leaking from the jar. Vikir intentionally threw a broken piece of his sword at it. Adolf was dumbstruck as Vikir asked if that was enough or if should he spill more water from the jar. Camus was happy to see Vikir win, and Hugo praised him for his slyness in battle against such a strong opponent. After that, fast forward to 7 years, the Hounds were fighting against an oxbear for their graduation exam from the academy. The oxbear charged toward the trainees, and the Hounds also retaliated. But the oxbear was too much for them to handle. Suddenly the triplets landed a critical hit on it. Seeing the oxbear running out of breath, the other trainees decided to jump in as well. The instructor then congratulated the graduating trainees and gave them words of encouragement. After the graduation ceremony, the Hounds talked among themselves about which night order they would join. One of the graduates asked where Vikir would go as he looked behind. Vikir was sitting on top of the oxbear corpse, which was bigger than the one the trainees had to face. The butler of the clan head suddenly approached Vikir and told him that Hugo was looking for him to decide his post. Vikir then went to meet Hugo and noticed a scar on his face. He asked about the scar on Hugo's face, to which Hugo replied that he was attacked by a barbarian who was skilled with the bow. Then Vikir asked if he had caught that archer. Hugo said that though he wasn't able to catch the archer, he was able to scar her face. During the conversation, Vikir was thinking about where his post would be. He thought to himself that he might get posted on the front lines again as an expendable like in his previous life. Additionally, the Hugo from the past would never let an illegitimate child take the elite course. However, this time Hugo told Vikir to try to be a congressman. Hearing this made Vikir shocked. Hugo told him that the things he has achieved have put him ahead of the other geniuses. Vikir accepted the offer from Hugo. Then Vikir asked for the reward he was promised for defeating Adolf Morg. His request for the reward left Hugo and the butler astonished. But Hugo still allowed Vikir to use it, saying that he wouldn't use it for anything ridiculous. While escorting Vikir out, the butler, Barrymore, told him that the clan head treasured him a lot and that he didn't put him immediately into real battle because of that. Vikir said that Hugo liked him only because he was useful and walked away. A few days later, in the underdog city of the Bakerville territory, Vikir walked into the main castle, but the workers there mistook him to be just another kid. Vikir looked back at the worker with red eyes and told him to let go of his hand immediately. He then shows the order papers for his post as the new vice consultant. Vikir ordered the workers to prepare some alcohol and women immediately so he could throw a party. Later that day, many elite and important people were invited to the party. The new vice consultant throwing a party on the first day made Underdog's office manager, Chihuahua, think of Vikir as just another spoiled elite brat. Suddenly Vikir appeared behind him and they both introduced themselves to each other. Due to being from outside the clan, Chihuahua had to endure many harsh treatments. He thought that even Vikir would treat him harshly. But seeing Vikir's behavior toward him began to change his mind. The next day on the main street of the city, Vikir introduced himself to the townspeople and talked about the laws of the Baskerville clan. Some of the people doubted him and said he'd become corrupted as well. Chihuahua, who was respected by the townspeople, yelled at them for bad-mouthing the vice-consul. Then Vikir took a stick and buried it half into the ground. Vikir then goes on to announce a new special law, that he would give 100 million gold to anyone who could remove the stick. Hearing that, everyone went silent and awestruck. The people began to talk about this extraordinary amount of prize just to pull a stick out. But even after such a high price, no one came forward. Vikir then raised the prize from 100 million gold to 1 billion. This sudden rise in prize made people angry. They thought Vikir was just trying to make a fool out of them. Vikir had become impatient as no one was coming to pull out the stick. So, this time he raised the price to 10 billion gold. The people started to question whether they should try this out or not, but some of them were scared that Vikir would execute them if anyone pulled out the stick. After some time, a young girl asked to try pulling out the stick. But the people told her to stop being greedy or she could be killed. The young girl's mother was sick, so she needed the money and decided to try pulling out the stick. The girl went near the stick even though she was scared. She hoped that they would at least pay her something for making a fool of herself. Then she proceeded to pull out the stick, and to everyone's surprise, it was easily pulled out of the ground. The girl was shaking with fear after pulling out the stick, thinking that Vikir would execute her. But instead, Vikir gave her 1 billion gold and promised to send the rest of the money to her home with a guard to protect it. This performance proved to be an opportunity that allowed the special law to become more famous, and due to the new law, crime rates were halved. Later in Vikir's office, he talked with Chihuahua about his next plan. He brought out the city map and started marking out the location of the illegal groups he had surveyed before his regression. Suddenly one of the workers entered the room saying that the village hall's Youth Autonomy Association had requested a meeting. Hearing that, Vikir got excited as the time to annihilate the pests eating away at the city had finally come. In Underdog City's most luxurious hotel club, there was a VIP room that cost 10 million per 6 hours. There a party was raging with the core 7 people that comprised the teenage self-governing committee of the municipality. The participants in the party were the children of the 7 native clans within Baskerville. The teenagers were wasting money earned through illegal ways on expensive wines. They kept arrogantly talking about how the Baskervilles were the ones protecting them, which made the Baskerville their hunting dogs. One of the teenagers suggested teasing Vikir and asserting their dominance over him. They made a plan to throw a big party for Vikir and then foot him with the bill. Suddenly one of the waiters serving them brought over some girls to accompany them. One of the teenagers noticed a male among them and said no one asked for a male escort. One of the waiters then grabbed Vikir's hair, which pissed him off. Vikir immediately broke the waiter's arm and introduced himself. Seeing the vice-consul so suddenly astonished the teenagers, and they decided to train him. Vikir grew impatient and broke down the champagne tower with mana resonance just by touching the table. Seeing Vikir use mana resonance scared the teenagers as they finally understood that despite being young, Vikir was well-skilled and highly valued in the Baskerville clan. The teenagers were talking quietly when Vikir suddenly approached one of them. The teenagers got scared and spilled out that they were about to leave Vikir to hold the bag after enjoying the party. The blonde teenager tried to calm Vikir down and said that they were just testing the new vice-consul. Vikir then punches one of them and said a master was allowed to test his dog as much as he wanted, but the opposite cannot be true. He then injured the teenager and threw him to the ground. He asked the others if they knew why he ended up like that. The blonde teenager replied that he knew why. And then Vikir said that if they knew why, then they needed a good beating, saying that he crushed the head of the teenager who was on the floor. This made the others angry, but Vikir immediately shut them up by naming all the illegal deeds they had committed. Then he began to beat down the teenagers, saying that it was time to punish filthy animals who feared nothing. Vikir then brought the teenagers to an underground prison and locked them up. Chihuahua told him that he overdid it, but Vikir was just getting started. He looked at the angry teenager and said that when the sun set, he would execute them all and wipe out everyone connected to them. Hearing that, the teenagers began to apologize relentlessly. Chihuahua mentioned that their clans would not let this slide easily and they would take revenge one way or another. Vikir replied that their clans wouldn't help them due to their involvement with the criminal organization, but the blonde teenager refused to admit that he had any involvement in all that. Suddenly a man entered the prison with a bag in his hand. The man was the torturer of the prison who was commissioned by Vikir to make new torture tools. Seeing those tools made the teenagers lose their resolve to stay quiet as Vikir was preparing to torture them. A few days later, the rumors about the corrupted teenagers' arrest quickly spread. The people of the Underdog City were happy to hear about their arrest, but as they were from noble families, it was only a matter of time before they were out again. As predicted by the people, the 7 native clans sent a small token of apology to the new vice-consul, and even local powerhouses offered Vikir a large number of gold to release them. Or that's at least what everyone thought would happen until 7 heads were displayed in the city square. They belonged to the 7 teenagers. Vikir predicted that the nobles wouldn't stay quiet at this and that a bloodbath might soon happen in the underdog city. A few days later, Chihuahua was seen wearing a mask as he was accompanied by the vice-consul who was disguised as a slave. On the outskirts of the underdog city, a huge tent was set up for the carnival where the slave auction began. Chihuahua disguised himself as a noble who went there to sell his slave. At night, the circus began with many corrupt officials and nobles attending it. The host began the auction by showing up Merciel, an A-rank monster that was said to have 19 hearts. Many people showed their interest in the monster, which was sold for 250 million gold. One by one other products and slaves were sold as well. Then a special product was held for auction, a girl from the barbarian tribe called Balak. The barbarian girl began acting savagely, which caused people to lose interest. The host began to lower the price, but still no one showed any interest. Seeing as no one was interested in buying the barbarian, the host ordered her to be put back in the cage. As an apology, he brought out the best product, Vikir. Seeing his well-built body and red eyes, a woman from the audience immediately raised 600 million for Vikir. Another man raised 800 million, which angered the woman. They began arguing among themselves until a high-ranking noble raised 6 billion. The Baron's assistant told him that buying a slave for 6 billion would be a waste, but the Baron refused to listen and yelled at her. Vikir was then sold to the Baron. He went up to the Baron and broke his handcuffs, shocking the Baron and his assistant. Vikir then stomped on the ground, which sent the Baron flying. Right after, he grabbed the Baron's arm and ripped it off. The Baron's assistant recognized Vikir when he removed his wig. Seeing the vice-consul made the nobles anxious, but Vikir assured them that none of them could return in one piece from here. The host orders his men to kill Vikir, seeing as he didn't have any weapons on him. Vikir then brought out Beelzebub and one by one slaughtered the host's men. Seeing Vikir's red aura terrified the host, Chihuahua accidentally revealed his identity, which allowed the host to take hostage of him. He threatened Vikir by holding a knife to Chihuahua and told him to surrender. Chihuahua then tried to commit suicide to not be a hindrance to Vikir. Vikir laughed and commended Chihuahua for his loyalty. Then he used the trump card he had received from Hugo. Vikir blew the whistle, which made a loud sound, but seeing nothing else happen, the host thought of it as just for a scare. Right after, a blade was shoved through the host's neck and his head was cut clean by an unknown individual. One of the host's men tried attacking the unknown individual, but he was cut into pieces. Soon after, more men entered wearing the same uniform as the unknown individual. The Baron's assistant became scared after recognizing them. They were the Empire's most brutal knights, known as annihilation experts, the Baskerville clan's Pitbull Knight Order. One of the knights appeared behind her with the intent to kill her, but Vikir stopped the knight and told him to leave her. Vikir ordered the knights to rip the others to shreds and not to kill anyone who was lying down. The knights then began killing the corrupted people, while some were lying on the ground. Vikir's uncle, the commander of the Pitbull Knights, asked if he was satisfied with the results. The commander commended Vikir and told him to join the Pitbull Knights. Vikir politely refused, and quickly went away to handle some other matters. In the backstage area, he saw the barbarian girl badly beaten and trapped in a cage. Vikir took out a healing potion he got from the Knight's Order and poured some of it into the girl's mouth. The potion began working immediately and healed the girl. After she woke up, Vikir told her to run away in barbarian language. Before leaving the tent, the girl again said something. Vikir thought she was just thanking him and went on with his own business. He found the corpse of Murcielago and had Beelzebub drain its blood. The next day, rumors started to spread that the nobles who attended the illegal slave auction were sent to the underdog prison. The famous club of the underdog city was also burnt, and the heads of the VIPs were put on display. The 7 clans sent written protests to the consulate, but Vikir rejected all of them and began investigating the 7 clans. After that, the protests from the 7 clans completely stopped, and the arrogant clan heads personally came to Vikir and bowed down to stop the investigation. But Vikir had already finished investigating and found violations committed by the clans, and thus their properties would be seized, and all members within 3 extensions of their family would be executed for the crime of treachery. After this, underdog city's welfare was secured and the approval rate of Vikir by the citizens went up day by day. And that is all for now. This video contained chapters 12 to 23. Find out more about this series in the next recap video. Let us know in the comments the manhwa or manga you want us to recap next.